Welcome back to the Bazaar. I'm Miko, and it's time for another patch review. And this patch review is going to be a little bit different because there are some pretty important things happening out of game as well that I want to talk about. I guess before I get into specific feedback though, I do want to say that generally the last two patches, as in the major patch and the hotfix, were both fantastic. There are countless changes that were great, and I won't be covering all of those because it would waste time and muddy the waters where it is meant to be a feedback video. This video is for the things that need changing, not the things that are great, of which there are many. I'm a huge fan of the core rework, all the minor iterative buffs, the catalyst reworks, and Vanessa's aquatic changes. Generally, if it goes unmentioned, you can just assume I liked it. This is a video for the problems in the game that I want to see addressed. And to that end, I'm going to briefly talk about the current simulator controversy that's happening, where Bazaar Planner is developing a simulator that I think is a really cool tool and I would like to see be allowed, but is currently banned. And there is a sticky post on the subreddit about this ban. And I want to talk about this in no small part because one, I'm very much on the pro simulation side of things, and I don't think there are a lot of people articulating that point very well in the community. But two, is because it's being heavily censored. This thread you're seeing right here is not really the truth. If you read through this, it's sorted by new right now. You can see it got locked eventually, but it wasn't locked for a long time. And you can see, like, generally people are pretty pro banning simulators, at least in terms of what's displayed. And if you scroll down far enough, you'll get to my post that has 2 upvotes on it. And I thought this was weird that it didn't like have either a massively negative score or somebody respond in any way. Now you can see that my post is right between get 'em and good if you sort by new. And I'm sorry that my dark mode does not work on private browsing, so ignore the flashbang, but you can see that if I go over to a private browser, my post is simply not there. People who are posting in defense of the system, even when they're posting like really like well-reasoned, just like, hey, we think maybe the rules should be different, that's just not being shown. And I didn't want to be like, oh, woe is me, censorship, until I actually like made a post about it. So I made this post, and you can easily pause it and see exactly what I say here. But essentially, the important part of this is, sorry, this post has been removed by the moderators of r/playthebazaar. It was never available for anyone to see. Essentially, the Bazaar subreddit is heavily censored. If you want the rules to change, that is not a place you can discuss this. Which raises the question, where is a place you can discuss this? I'm not saying use simulators. I straight up start this with I don't endorse their usage, and I lay out why I would like the rules to change. And this post is not allowed on r/playthebazaar, the official subreddit. So where is a place you can discuss why you would like to see rules changed if this isn't? So my first major bit of feedback is in the moderation of the subreddit, you have to allow people to have dissenting voices. If someone posts a well-reasoned, polite explanation of why they want to see the game changed, you should not just destroy that post. That's ridiculous. And I'll include me verbatim reading this towards the end of the post, but for now, the feedback I'm giving is one, just stop censoring the subreddit so heavily. What are you doing? And if you don't know, yes, Tempo is still running the subreddit. They backed out of their plan to hand it over to other people. And then two, I would like to see simulators allowed. I will talk about this at much more length later in the post. I don't want to bog down the initial feedback any more than I already have. In terms of general meta feedback, I think everybody except Pig is pretty equal. They're all fairly powerful. That said, I do think each character has a lot of dead archetypes that makes the game less fun because you go to shops and see cards you really can't ever justify buying. Mac is the least bad in this regard. He doesn't see a ton of dead cards every run, but most Vanessa runs are piloting hard towards weapons and most dualies are pushing for drill builds. It's not that these are like super overpowered archetypes, but everything else they have is either much worse or much less consistent. I think Dooley and Vanessa both desperately need more versatility. It feels to me like Drill Dooley and Weapon Vanessa are head and shoulders above their alternatives, but they're only on equal playing fields with each other and Mac. It's not like all their other builds are the right power level, it's that they're too weak and need to be buffed up. I wouldn't want to see any major nerfs to either Weapon Vanessa or Drill Dooley currently. Now, I haven't talked about Pig yet, and that's because Pig is in a bad spot. Pig needs help. There was a Reddit thread a while back saying pretty much exactly that, and a lot of Pig mains came to his defense saying that he was just harder than other heroes and required a lot of hours in the current patch to get a decent win rate on him. I don't know if the Pig defenders in that thread realized that they were agreeing with OP. No other character needs to spend 10 to 20 hours getting rolled just to get a decent win rate on them. More specifically, for me, the reason I haven't been playing Pig is that I don't get to pilot Pig as much as other characters. I don't get to make super important decisions to open late game paths in the same way I do on other characters. If I'm playing Regal Blade, I cannot do it without Regal Blade. Same for Fixer Upper, Giant Ice Club, Kiwas. Same with every other late game option. Pig has plenty of viable late game builds, but I, as the pilot, am not pushing myself towards any specific out. It is my job to spot an out and go all in on it as quickly as possible, and it doesn't feel fun for me at all. There is far less of, I will buy earrings for a potential pendulum loop going on with Pig, and far more of, I will go to Moreland and hope that he has either Pawn Shop or Fixer Upper, because I currently do not have any way to get to 10 wins. In the past, there was more flexibility with Pig. Early piloting decisions had more direct impact on your early win rate and could vastly increase your effectiveness. Pig's late game dominance was also much more uncontested on previous patches. Now though, you're simultaneously much less likely to win early and much less likely to win late. Pig's lower power level feels like it hinges the result of my games entirely on the first 1 or 2 possible outs I see. My piloting decisions are far less likely to beat Weapon Menesses and Max early on, so I have very little time to find an in-game path and transition into it. Even if it is true that Pig reaches the same win rate as other characters with 20 hours of investment, not into Pig generally, but specifically Pig on this patch, I don't enjoy the character due to a perceived lack of agency. Additionally, why would I spend 20 hours getting stomped just so that I could learn how to achieve the same degree of success that other characters start with? It certainly isn't helping that the way in which Pig is weak is also directly making him less fun, less piloting impact, more random chance. It all equates to less player agency. I do still think that Mac is the best character in the game, but not by a large margin. I don't really want to see nerfs on him, and certainly not without packaging meaningful buffs alongside them. I know Calcinator and Femur are both very good, but every other build feels pretty reliant on high rolling to actually take it to 10 wins, and he's getting close to being in the same ballpark as the other characters where he has like one really viable build path and everything else is miles behind it. And he's not quite there yet, but a couple more nerfs will put him in the same boat as Weapon Manessa and Drill Dueling. I would really like to see all the characters getting their weaker archetypes buffed up tremendously, and that especially includes anything meant to be strong in the early and mid game on Pig. Next up, I'm just going to go through the patch and talk about the things where I view it as like a slightly problematic change that might need further looking at. And I want to start with the changes to the tier adjustment on the status ailment bugs, because I personally think that bugs are no longer oppressive, they're at a reasonable power level, but I don't really know that the tier reduction needed to apply to Black Spider and Yellow Mantis. I kind of feel like until the late game, the bugs are pretty hard to assemble and not actually that strong until at least gold tier Black Spider. And for something that takes up so many card slots in the pool, it feels pretty bad for the whole archetype to be like, oh yeah, if you don't have Black Spider, then bugs aren't actually that fast. I don't know that it's like aggressively too weak, it's probably not a problem, but something about the power level of bugs right now, the way it's like so reliant on having so many at such a high tier, feels bad to me. In a way, I'm having a hard time articulating either the problem or the solution. Next up, there was a lot of multicast changes with stuff like Robotics Factory here, where now they all are at Gold Diamond with no additional benefit. At Gold, it's a 2-second cooldown penalty. At Diamond, it's a 1-second cooldown penalty. And I assume that, like myself, most people watching this video have seen none of these nerf cards get any play. I don't think I bought one once, maybe like one game of Dooley, I had nothing else and I had a Diamond Robotic Factory. I think that's it. I think I have seen maybe 1 or 2 since the patch. People don't play this, and it's for pretty straightforward reasons. They're not very good cards in their current state. This nerf definitely was too far in the other direction. I don't know what the exact solution should be. I kind of think that a more interesting solution might be to tier shift them down to make the current gold version of these things a silver version with the same penalty and have the diamond version suffer no penalty. So it goes 2-1-0 from silver to diamond. That would make it easier to find these things, which for some things that is like a build around card you need to find early. It would still make upgrading them very important. I think the diamond wins are playable. It's just that getting the diamond wins is very hard to do. I think if they were gold tier at their current penalties, that would be playable. And I think having no penalty at diamond might be appropriate. But whatever the exact solution is, the current implementation, these cards just take up space in shops. People don't buy them. Now, it's not actually listed here on their page for the Mac updates. They list a bunch of items that changed, but it's not all of them, so let me go over to how Bazaar. The Apothecary is one of the items that changed. Now it gives a reagent or a catalyst. I think this is a very bad design, because pretty much with every stash you can imagine, you either want a reagent because you have too many catalysts, or a catalyst because you have too many reagents. You do not want to randomly get one or the other, because let's say you're up 1 reagent on what you need to be and you need a catalyst to transform it. If you get a catalyst, great, you're perfectly balanced. If you get a reagent, now you are 2 transmutes backlogged and you're probably going to have stash problems on the next day. I don't care which one this does do, it just needs to do one of them consistently. And while I do want to talk about Money Tree for Pygmalion, I think we need to talk about the Hotfix version of it. So let's pop over to the Hotfix, where Money Tree had its cooldown reduction removed, its cooldown is now flat 4 seconds, and the value scaling was slightly buffed. And for easier visualization, here is the new Money Tree. And this is just heal Fixer Upper, right? Instead of this last 2 lines, Fixer Upper just says shield equal to 1, 2, 3, 4 times this item's value. That's the level scaling it gets, as opposed to scaled spare change and then value scaling when selling spare change. Now, shield is generally better than healing. And being 4 times the value, like yes, this does self-scale and that's neat and all, but Fixer Upper will inevitably be vastly, vastly more effective than this, because 4 times your rewards cards, your truffles, your ledger in particular, your VIP passes, is going to amount to far, far more value over the course of a game than when you spell a spare change gain value. Considering that heal is fundamentally weaker than shield, unless there's like some crazy overheal synergy that I'm just not seeing, this is a vastly worse card. I think the idea is supposed to be that overheal is easier to capitalize on than like specifically Spike Shield, Force Field, and Crusher Claw. But the reality is that it's much easier to turn a Fixer Upper into damage than a Money Tree. In no small part because Fixer Upper scales so much more effectively. And the huge part of cooldown 4 seconds being a nerf to Money Tree is not that it's just a slower, weaker item in the late game. That obviously hurts it a lot. It doesn't scale with VIP Pass anymore, right? Now, when you're using VIP Pass, you trigger it every 4 seconds, not every 1 second. So one of the main sources of scaling on this was not actually selling spare change, it was being a 1-second item next to a VIP Pass, and that was removed. Right now, Money Tree is in the vast majority of circumstances just a stopgap property that you don't really want to use, where it can give you some early economy, and it's not really an in-game option like Fixer Upper is. Maybe it's not supposed to be, but I do want to draw attention to the fact that this is basically just an economy stopgap card and not actually a win condition property because it scales so poorly right now. Having said most of my feedback, I think it's time to talk about simulators a little bit. I personally really disagree with the decision to ban simulators. I'm just going to read this post verbatim. I think this really articulately explained why I feel the way I do. I'm very annoyed that this sort of discussion is not allowed on the subreddit. It's sort of indefensible censorship. This is not encouraging cheating. This is not breaking any rules. This is not flaming. This is just like a polite explanation of why I would like to see simulators allowed. And that conversation is not allowed on the subreddit, which is really, really bad for the health of the community, that just asking for change is against the rules. So I'm going to read this verbatim, and I'm going to cross-post this video to the subreddit and see if that gets banned immediately too, or if it ends up allowed. And so that we're clear, this was originally awaiting moderator approval. What that means is that it had some sort of banned text in it that was not allowed, so a moderator has to approve it. They looked at the post, they said, yeah, we're not going to allow that, and then the message changed to a moderator has removed it. So let's get into my full opinion on the simulator situation. In defense of simulators / a plea for change. Let's preface this with what should be obvious: simulators are banned and I don't endorse their usage. This post is designed to discuss the merits of their ban and why I think the game would be improved by allowing them. From the current stickied thread, the reasoning is as follows. These provide an unfair advantage that is considered cheating. The intended spirit of the Bazaar involves learning, adapting, and developing the personal skill to evaluate risk and predict outcomes, not relying on external simulators to make those decisions for you. I'd like to first establish that every game with legal simulators can make these exact arguments to ban them, but doesn't. Bazaar is not so unique that these arguments are unique to it. Next, on this subject of unfair advantages, that would only apply to paid simulators, right? If it's a free program, then every player can use it. It'd be like saying that Tempo doesn't want to add the codex because it would provide an unfair advantage to players that opened the codex to learn how the game worked. For me, though, the most important aspect of this discussion is just player engagement and enjoyment. That's probably because I don't consider simulators in any capacity to be cheating. Let's take it for granted, though, that a simulator is providing you with a slight edge over other players and that this is actually unfair. Honestly, though, I'd argue that this is just one of the many edges granted by being the sort of dedicated player willing to use a simulator in the first place. How big of an edge do we really think this is? How many monster fight losses do we think that somebody with a simulator avoids? How many times does the simulator let somebody beat an enemy they otherwise would have shied away from? To me, it seems like the answer is 1, maybe 2 per run. Over 1 per run, at least for high-level players, i.e. the target audience for sim users, seems really generous. That is not a huge advantage. It certainly is one, but it isn't the only impact that simulators have. Simulators allow the most hardcore portion of your audience tremendously more ways to engage with the game. I don't even care about using the sim to optimize monster fights. The reason I want access to the sim is to better understand complex board states. There have been so many different boards with bugs duly in the past month, or with access to wildly different options and enchants, it becomes incredibly unclear which of your possible board configurations is actually the best one. It's not something where I can test it in-game. I try my best in my PvE fights, but the simple fact is that every PvE fight has different total health, different crowd control effects, and my board itself includes some randomness. A sample size of 3 different PvE fights viewed with 5-minute gaps between them is basically useless for testing similarly powerful boards. That's one of my major issues with the decision to ban simulators. The stated reasoning was that you're supposed to learn how to do these things yourself, but the fact is that without simulators, the most complex board states are not something you are going to learn. You're going to look at it, make an educated guess, and never have any real ability to confirm it. I think that for a substantial portion of the player base, people like myself who really want to get into the nuts and bolts of the game, simulators allow that in a way that real gameplay never will. I strongly disagree with the rationale of banning simulators to force players to properly learn the game, because simulators are themselves a learning tool that cannot be replicated in the game due to the tremendous fight-to-fight variance. Sorry, this post has been removed by the moderators of r/PlayTheBazaar. In their defense, the subreddit is titled Play the Bazaar, not Talk About the Bazaar. I'm clearly in the wrong place. I've got to assume that even if you firmly disagree with every point I made, you don't agree that this is something that should be banned, right? Because even if you think I'm completely wrong and my tone came off way more condescending than I ever intended it to be and I'm just looking like an asshole that's wrong about everything, this still isn't something that's bad for a community to discuss why people want rules to change. Especially when the rule in question is like shutting down a portion of the community's way to enjoy the game. It's not like the sim creators are out here hacking items into the game. This is not blatant cheating, this is a learning tool. Anyway, that post said everything I had to say about simulators as well as I can say it, so I'm not going to bother repeating myself going in circles. Let's start wrapping this up. As always, I have some recurring feedback that I'm going to let scroll past the screen. These are things where they haven't been addressed yet, but I still believe them. Some of this actually got addressed last time. I was very happy to see it. And in general, I make these feedback videos because the feedback does get taken in. It does get addressed sometimes, and I'm very happy when it does. And as we wrap this up, I will say, I think the meta is generally in a good spot right now. Obviously not for Pig, and there's less variety on the characters than I would like, but it's not a super one-dimensional and toxic meta. We've had those in the past. You can do a lot worse than this. I think all the changes are moving the game in a better direction, and while I have issues with some of the changes, my main issue right now is with the decision to ban simulators, which is becoming a point of discussion in the community, so I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. And then, because I tried to and failed to give my 2 cents on it, the censorship on the subreddit, which is the main platform for people to discuss the game. It's to the point where I'm probably going to go figure out what the other Bazaar subreddit is, because I assume there is one by people who don't want to be censored by the company, because this is just sort of outrageous that saying you want the rules changed is not allowed. Anyways, that'll be all for now. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.